For today's episode, we will be covering microtransactions and consumer manipulation within the video games industry.
I thought that was hilarious, and then I was like, okay, you know what? this game is like I'm here to jam. Let's go.
Hello and welcome to Deep in the D-Pad, where we explore all things gaming through an intellectual lens. I'm your friendly neighborhood host and game designer, Carlos, and with me today, as always, is...
Arcade Taylor.
But first, let's get into our D-Pad delights. Ryan, how about you kick us off with our D-Pad delights this week? Anything to do with microtransactions, perhaps?
Yes, well, I have some kind of, like, microtransaction immunity, but I am a fan of other people using... microtransactions, like in when we play Rocket League, neither of us have the Rocket Pass,
right? But
I absolutely adore when other people score on us and we get to see a fun animation. It's like a consolation prize, you know. It's like, oh, these people paid to have a Tetris-shaped object with like the little cubes dancing. Like, that's great. Thank you for allowing me to see this. Or like the Grim Reaper will come out of someone's goal. I don't really understand why people are so drawn to certain like cosmetic features like that. Like, they're willing to pay for them when you could just have like something more basic for free. But I guess that's why we're here today. What do you find delightful?
Kind of on a similar thread, for my D-Pad delight, it has to do with the first Battle Pass I ever got. This was for Fortnite. I was pretty like not into Fortnite, and then as it like blew up like super quickly, I just felt like really against it. And at some point I got into it because it was like, hey, this is so popular, I need to like study it from like an academic standpoint. So let me go ahead and play this and get a feel for it and see what makes it tick. And ended up liking the game, ended up getting my friends to like try it out for like a month or two. And it was the first time I saw these Battle Royale games add in very fun objectives that gave me something that felt rewarding outside of just winning the match. And that was like something that, for me, sort of revolutionized the genre, because no longer was I playing like a 15 to 30 minute match that was all silence and like build up to just a deflating... I get killed by somebody 500 yards away finish. It was like, oh shit, let me collect the letters for Fortnite across the map. Let me find these snowmen alongside the, of course, I want to win the game. So I actually like played enough and like completed. I wasn't playing like, I wasn't using all my time to play, but I played like a fair amount of time, and I did the challenges enough that like I got enough currency on my battle pass to unlock another battle pass, and I think I was able to ride that for like 3 battle passes total before I my schedule picked up and I couldn't play enough to get those challenges. But I thought that was awesome. I really like that model of battle pass, and I don't think most other developers do it like that still, and I don't even know if Fortnite does it like that to this day because it updates so often.
Yeah, I want to linger here for a minute because I have like many thoughts on Fortnite, as I've put like over 100 hours into Fortnite. God, do I love that game.
But you've never gotten the battle pass for it.
I've never gotten the battle pass for Fortnite. There are NPCs in the game now, and there's an in-game currency. They have gold bars, and you can like basically do quests for these NPCs, where it'll be like, they're like one of the most common is like eliminate a specific player. So it's another person, and they kind of give you like a radar, like a moving radar of where that person is. They're in this like general region,
right? And
when you're being hunted, you get notified that you're being hunted. And
God.
If anybody...
It's Call of Duty, dude. They took that from Warzone.
Oh, really?
Fortnite's still doing it!
Still stealing things?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. That's so hilarious. I was like, Quest, whoa. Do you have to go to, like, a hub city and this and that? And where do these NPCs exist? Are they, like, just in the map and when you drop down and you talk to them?
Yeah, they're spread throughout the entire map.
Yep.
And it's not, like, sometimes it'll be, like, destroy a hay bale or, like, forage for items or something like that, and then you get rewarded in gold, and then you can buy things from the NPCs, so like specific weapons that you can only get from the NPCs, or like you can hire an NPC to like kind of like be your mercenary basically, and they'll like tag along with you, and I think there might be other
that's
stuff
cool.
that you can do. It's super cool.
So
yes.
that's what Warzone doesn't do. Okay.
And the gold carries between games as well.
Ooh.
So it's an in-game. It's you only use it in the match. But like I have like a stockpile of like I have thousands of gold because I rarely use it, but I always pick up a quest.
So you're saying you can. So you're saying you can build up this gold by doing quests in each match, but the gold you build up persists between matches, and this means that if you hoard your money as you have, you could have a string of matches where you drop in and maybe just like buy all the best shit like at the start from NPCs.
Yeah, you have to find them, and there's like a little icon on the minimap that shows you where they are. But essentially, yes. I think also, I know that when people die, they drop gold. But I think there's something special about that. I'm not sure if they drop like part of the supply that they've picked up during that match, or if it's the entire supply of what they've picked up, so you might have to win the match in order to like preserve the gold that you've accrued. So there are different ways that you can get gold though.
That's cool. So my initial reaction to this was very much like, oh shit, they just like took bounties from or contracts from Call of Duty Warzone, which for me it was like, oh, this is actually an innovation within Battle Royale that I really like. That's what pulled me to Warzone, and then kind of like the classic COD Modern Warfare like Xbox 360 version like feeling was still there in the gameplay, and that's what had me stick around for a little bit. The fact that like Fortnite saw this idea, and I think Fortnite's been doing this for like every season, and to some extent the other battle royales try to adopt like things from each other. It's very incestuous, but it's cool. It is so cool to see Fortnite like level up that idea.
Yes.
Because in Warzone, like there is money, there's like buying stations and shit, but you can't like buy weapons. It's always like just the kill streaks, you know, like UAV, Predator missile, that type of thing. And there's absolutely nothing in so far that is like you could hire a mercenary NPC to help you. But the thing you described, the bounty, like hunt this specific player, that's called like most wanted in that's a most wanted contract in Warzone. And there's like a race to the nearest buy station contract and other things like that.
It's interesting that they can keep it fresh by borrowing from other franchise or like other battle royale. But you know, it does raise questions about that I would eventually like to address with you with like intellectual property and you know, like It's something I think about with like cookbooks, right? Like if I was ever going to write a cookbook, I'm curious how much of like, because I have recipes, right, that I have taken online and then I've like, you know, changed butter for oil, or you know, or like brown sugar for white sugar, and like how much, you know, all cornbread has cornmeal, right, for the most part. I mean, I imagine that's like one of the essential ingredients of cornbread. So how many variations on cornbread could there possibly really be? You know, they kind of borrow from each other, and like cooks learn from other cooks, and you know, there's a little bit of experimenting. But for if someone was going to write a cookbook, like how much of that intellectual property can they really like call their own? And that's kind of without allowing there to be like kind of like breeding between games. I'm curious how like, you know, how we exactly draw those kinds of lines, but I'll put a pin in that for now because that's just like a huge can of worms.
Yeah.
But I know that Fortnite used they had like like a Marvel type, they like had some kind of like licensure with the Marvel. And they had a bunch of like superhero type abilities, and it was at the same time that like, or like right after Spellbreak was released,
right?
And I was so pissed because it was just like a poor ripoff of Spellbreak, and also like I don't want there to be like magic stuff in my like battle royale. Like I'm done with that,
right?
And it really ruined it for me, and I stopped playing for like that whole season, and now I'm back again because they
got rid of it,
and they got rid of it. Yes, and I did not think they were going to get rid of it because they brought in driving at one point, and then they never got rid of the driving. But let me go to the like why I have not gotten the battle pass in Fortnite, right? So you mentioned that you you got the battle pass once and then you were able to like basically get the subsequent seasons like just kind of coasting off of
Every couple of tiers I would get 100 coins or something, V-Bucks I think they call it. Every couple tiers they gave me 100, and I just progressed fast enough to get enough for a new battle pass. Whereas in Warzone, I'll say they only give you like currency, 100 currency every like 10 to 15 levels. And that's just brutal. Like, you don't build up enough for a new battle pass until you hit like level 98, whereas in Fortnite it'd be something more akin to like level 50 or level 65, that type of thing.
Right, and I have 700 V-Bucks right now, I think, and I think you need 900 in order to get the battle pass. I might be off by like like 100 points in for either of those numbers, but the point being that even though I have invested no money because I've played enough, I get super close to unlocking the battle pass, which like at this point it's like now it's just like a mission of like, let's see if I can unlock the like perennial battle passes where like I get just 900 and then it's like I just coast and like just play enough Fortnite to continue to get the battle pass, because they show you all of the things that you're missing out on, but they're all cosmetic, and honestly some of them are terrible. Like there's this like really cool looking like blue dude, but like the blue dude is terrible unless you're in the water. I mean, he's so easy to spot.
Camouflage factor, yeah. And cosmetics, like most people don't bring it up.
Right, yes. And that's, I think, the number one thing that I consider when I'm thinking about like a choice of like a cosmetic in Fortnite. I'm like, how does this influence? I'm terrible with the building stuff, so I really think a lot about like make it a stealth game and stuff. Like I'm very intentional with like my movement, and I would be about the design, but I know that I wouldn't be choosing a character that did not blend in with green, since so much of Fortnite is green.
Right, exactly. And yeah, that's something I think about a lot in Population 1, the VR Battle Royale. When I'm looking at the different skins I unlock on my guns and my character, I immediately think like, how much does this expose me when I'm like regularly playing? And then I'll kind of like go with the flow after that. But kind of like wrapping up our D-pad delights on microtransactions and bringing us to our main course. Microtransactions. We've been talking for about 15 or so minutes about them, and we haven't really defined them. I think a lot of people know what microtransactions are without necessarily knowing what the word microtransaction means. So microtransaction is a small purchase, basically, within a gaming product. So if you look at Candy Crush, is probably like the easiest example in like recent memory. Candy Crush, when you lose, it says, hey, do you want to spend 99 cents to gain a new life? And you can spend $1, get a new life, and continue playing. We see this across tons of mobile games. It's basically part of the package now. If any mobile game you're playing is free, you know you're going to get advertisements shown at you between lives, and you know you're going to get the option to spend a little bit of money, aka micro bit of money, in this transaction where you say, hey, don't give me any more ads anymore, I'm willing to pay $1. I feel that's a little misleading already in the title microtransaction, Ryan, because we have seen mobile games have these like $20, $50, $100 bundles, like Clash Royale, Clash of Clans.
I was going to say, it's so important to mention that they get bundled, because like they make you think that you're getting a deal, because you kind of are, you know. I mean, as we're going to get into the whole like consumer manipulation stuff, but if it's like you get one life, or let's say you get 5 lives for $1, right? If they give you 10 lives for $1.50, then it's like buy one get one half off. You know, I mean, if you bought, and a lot of people will just buy they'll like, I just need 5 more lives, so they will just spend that dollar, and then they get into after they lose those 5 lives, those go more quickly than you realize. Then it's like, I need another 5 more. So bundling them, you know, the next day, if they're going to do the same thing, they may spend that $1.50 in order to get the 10 lives up front. But then if you're doing it so that you have 100 lives, you know, that's it gets extremely expensive.
Yeah. And so for the scope of this episode about microtransactions, we're going to be talking strictly about their inclusion in video games. We'll do some references to games that utilize the ones we're talking about, and we'll be somewhat covering battle passes, but I think this is more so going to be about the the like smaller transactions, the more like insidious ones. Battle passes feel a little more straightforward and provide a fair amount of value given what you're putting in, and there's some sort of like contractual thing you're signing into, like, yes, I'm signing into taking this challenge of playing enough to fill out this stamp card, versus the other type of microtransaction that we're trying to cover, which is more like, hey, you're in a tough spot, want to grease the wheels a little bit to get out of this, or like, hey, do you want to like improve your odds, like give a little money over here. That type of thing is what we're going to be focusing on more.
Okay, I think I want to push back against this just a tiny bit. So I want to name the essential characteristics of that you've already identified for microtransactions. The first one was that it is a purchase within a game.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not a purchase for the game itself. So, right, that's part of the idea.
Yes.
The second one is that there is a denomination that is very small of what is being offered.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So even though some of these things get bundled, there you can reduce it to if you get the smallest one, it's going to be $1 or $5. It's not going to be, exorbitant at face value. Maybe for what they're giving you, it might seem like it's a lot of money, but it's any job that you have in the United States legally, if you work there for an hour, you will be able to purchase at least one microtransaction. It's below minimum wage.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you want to add besides small in value and within game purchase? Meant to hook people? I mean, I know that that's kind of a subjective standard, but is from a business standpoint, it is something that is meant to get the customer returning, right?
Yes. I mean, is the microtransaction meant to get the customer returning? No. Actually, I'll push back on that notion. The microtransaction itself is the end goal. The design of the makeup of the odds of the game and the flow of the menus itself are what is designed to push you towards that microtransaction. So the microtransaction is the pot. Again, at the end of the rainbow. The rainbow is the trail that you follow, which is, oh boy, I need to just get one more yellow thing to match 3 here. Oh shit, all my shots coming up are bad colors. Oh no, I'm dead, but I could, if I only spent 50 cents here, then I can get that yellow bubble, and then boom, I'm at the end of the tunnel.
I dig what you're saying about the game is what's enticing you, and the microtransaction is the end goal. But from a business standpoint, all of the money that goes into the development wouldn't be, they wouldn't receive the return on investment if people who played it just got a single microtransaction. That's like following to the end of the rainbow and getting a single gold coin instead of getting the pot of gold. To get the pot of gold, you need people who are going to continue to buy microtransactions or
spend large in a single purchase. Yes.
Cool. I may talk about battle passes throughout this episode because I still kind of think that the function of battle passes is very similar to microtransactions, even though they are on like kind of like a grander scale. And I think that they are they're kind of like the bundle. Like you get a season's worth for $15, say, and I'm interested in juxtaposing like the two strategies because I kind of view them as I see how they're distinct, but they're similar enough that I'm curious about them and I want to continue to thread those needles.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm down to compare and contrast these. My own personal opinion, I feel that battle passes, if they dole out the right amount of currency every so often, then battle passes are like the best deal within a game. Otherwise, they tend to be like real grind fests or something.
What about DLC?
DLC, well, microtransactions in some cases are technically DLC, but I don't know how much we're going to cover that. Meaning, like, I kind of think we should exclude those because, at least for now, because they're like a single time purchase kind of thing. Is that they're a single time purchase, and like getting a skin is kind of like a functionally different purchase from getting extra lives to continue your progress or something like that. That's kind of where I fall on that for now, because there's so many different types of microtransactions that it's going to be hard to cover it all.
Right, for sure. I would definitely include skins under microtransactions personally. I was thinking about DLC that like opens up like new levels or something like new maps or something like that, where I think that has more of a functional degree than like something that's merely cosmetic. And I kind of view the like DLC with extra functional changes as like not very close to microtransactions.
We should include that.
Okay, cool, dope. I want it all.
All right, the listener, this is going to be kind of like a really bouncy, all over the place episode, but it'll all be about microtransactions. So for today's episode, we're going to be covering microtransactions, and we're going to try to put a price cap at about like $10-ish, maybe 13, to kind of label those as micro amounts of money within a game. But we're going to cover the wide range of these transactions, from like buying a reticle on like a shooter for $1.50 versus buying 3 extra lives in Candy Crush for the same amount of money versus buying a battle pass, which gives you a season's worth of content if and only if you play enough to actually gain the tokens to reward that to you. So one question I found to be interesting was, do microtransactions have to be recurring? My answer to this question is I think not. Like, microtransactions can totally be a single time purchase. Like, it's the transaction itself. The recurring, I just think of like, I practically think of like Netflix or like World of Warcraft, and like that to me doesn't really seem like a microtransaction unless you had it like hooked up to give you like 10 extra lives every month in Candy Crush for like $5. I think that's totally within the realm of microtransaction and recurring, but I don't think it's mandatory for this transaction to be a recurring transaction for us to call it a microtransaction. It's just the act of buying something for a small amount of money.
From the perspective of like the businesses, is it the case that they want microtransactions to be recurring, or is it the case that like what is the end goal? Is the end goal of one microtransaction? Because some of it is like loot boxes, right? And like the idea of like loot boxes is like completely like gambling, where it's like I don't know what the result is going to be, and I am motivated to continue purchasing this thing because it did not live up to what I wanted it to be, but I know it still could. And like that's like the lottery ticket mechanism, where it's like, well, with this ticket, I didn't win $1 million, but I won a single dollar. And that single dollar will keep me going. And I will buy another $2 lottery ticket with this $1 that I won, you know?
Yeah. Okay. I get what you're saying. So to reiterate your question, it's the business side of game development studios. Do the business side of things want microtransactions to be recurring? And the answer is yes, but not in the way you think. The way you at least gave your example suggests that they want every person making transactions to be like making them over and over and over again. And the cynical person in me says, yeah, that's absolutely what they want. Like, every business's goal is to make a growing amount of money like year after year after year, which is like, as we're learning painfully year after year, is an unsustainable model, but that is their goal. I think it's more so, yes, but they just want microtransactions to be happening. Like, it's not that they want someone per se, one individual, to keep paying them over and over for like Rocket League skins. Again, this is my like trying to be optimistic like point of view. If they're morally good, like if the business side is trying to be morally good, they will want microtransactions to happen from many different customers infrequently. That way, if your game like Rocket League has millions of players and they're each saying, oh, I'll spend some money here, I'll spend some money there, rather than I'm going to spend money like every single week, they're still getting millions of dollars from different people, but those people are giving the money when they're like in a better place to do so, rather than the more evil side of things, which is, let's get this one particular person to like lock into our game and give us like $10 every 2 days, and then eventually they like spend more and more money.
It reminds me of like the opposite of like the Guitar Hero Rock Band era, where a bunch of Guitar Heroes came out and Rock Band, like a bunch of rhythm games that were relatively similar came out in a very short period of time, and now nobody is really playing Guitar Hero anymore because they like absolutely milked the market and like, you know.
So that was Activision. That was more the publisher than the developer. And that's why you see so many developers listed under Guitar Hero, like Red Octane, Harmonix, Neversoft, and then it just says more in all capitals on Google.
So anyway, what I'm trying to say is like what you're describing sounds almost like the opposite of that, where instead of trying to like milk people to burn out on Rocket League, you know, to play Rocket League until they burn out, it's more of the games as service model, where Rocket League is something that you play with your friends for perhaps years, and, you know, you spend a few dollars, you know, a season in order to like continue to enjoy that experience to the fullest.
Yeah.
And if millions of people doing that, or hundreds of thousands of people doing that, then they're still going to rake in enough money to continue to support the servers for the game, etc.
Yes.
Right, and to keep innovating and creating new content.
Yes, ideally you have a game that can act as a platform, like a fun, enjoyable gameplay loop that's always going to be there for people, and you're spicing it up every so often, and providing cosmetic outlets for people to express themselves, which would draw them to spend money, which like I think is what happened to me naturally with playing Fortnite. I was playing it, realized, holy cow, I'm spending most of my gaming hours playing this, and it's been like quite a couple weeks, so let me go ahead and actually enjoy myself a little bit more by unlocking more challenges and having some ways I can like express myself at certain points of the game via those cosmetics. And I think that's honestly like the perfect model to go about this. How realistically that model is achieved, I don't know, but it's definitely going to need a lot more experimentation.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things I guess that we have yet to mention with this model is that, you know, when these games they make these games free to play. Like Rocket League was not originally free to play, but it is now free to play. I probably would not have purchased Rocket League. Now, as a result, I am contributing to their ecosystem by virtue of being there and making it easier to matchmake with other people who are trying to play competitive Rocket League, you know, and that's great. That's great for them. It's a win-win. You know, it's there's a symbiosis to this, you know, where like if we're going to think of them as like profiteering off of the people who are willing to spend money for goal explosions, and if I'm willing to just play to, you know, it really becomes like everybody has their own role. You know, the game is providing a base game for everybody. The developers are providing a base game for everybody, and also this bonus content for people who want to partake. And if someone has bonus content, it's like I can still play with them. It's not like they are now in a different. If it was a map that they had to pay for and I didn't pay for the map, then there would be no. We wouldn't be in the same ecosystem, right? But because it's just like the cosmetics of their cars or their goal or whatever, then we can all be in the same place and enjoy the game together.
Yeah, exactly. Rocket League is just really good example of like an equal playing field for pretty much everyone on many different levels. Let's take a look at what the industry's reason for creating microtransactions. More so, this is going to focus on the developers at first. So within the video game industry, development studios are comprised of a bunch of people that get paid some amount of money yearly to go ahead and like work hundreds of hours to make games, and well, more than hundreds actually. But the injection of microtransactions at first, I think, came from the arcade era, like the 80s arcade era. We didn't consider these microtransactions like...
Give me that Pac-Man. Quarter, quarter.
Exactly. So Pac-Man, Street Fighter, and Time Crisis, like all of these arcade games that were designed to be just a little extra tough so that you'd spend money at such a crucial moment, those are microtransactions. That was like the OG design, which made its way to the Apple Marketplace and Google Play Store as the rise of mobile games came into fruition. And so these moments of like drop an extra quarter to keep Pac-Man going became hook up your credit card and spend 99 cents to give Candy Crush 3 extra lives, or like...
I totally agree with you. I think that there is like a lot of history that you're skipping over there.
Yeah.
So first of all, what's interesting is that like in the definition of like contemporary microtransactions that you were outlining at the beginning, the first thing that you said was that it's an in-game purchase, and that is not true of old school games, right? Like the arcade games that you're talking about.
They literally didn't have the technology to do an in-game purchase like that.
And then you eventually jump to like iPhones and you know, Androids and having like those stores. But what's in between that is the like home console, you know, like having an Atari in your house. And they also did not have the technology for microtransactions there either, because they needed the internet basically in order to, or, you know, I mean, I guess they could have invented some kind of machine, like a home console machine where you like inserted your credit card or something like that, that maybe would not have had to work with the internet. I don't know, that's all speculative, but you know, it's like they would have kept trying, because the industry made a ridiculous amount of money off of arcades. I wish I had like a statistic for this, like off the top of my head, but anytime I've seen like a documentary that like talks about like the 80s video games in like the 80s, it's just like astounding. Like you know, it's like the American economy was, you know, like
just run by arcades, kids in arcades.
I heard it described once that it was like it would be like your parents, you'd be out with your parents, and like the way that like nowadays they like give you a tablet, or they'll give like a toddler like not you, Carlos, you're too old for this, but like when kids are out with their parents and like they just kind of like plug them into a tablet or a phone or something like that and kind of keep them preoccupied. They used to do that with like, here, take $1 and like go play at the arcades and like leave the adults alone, because we like are so tired of our children. We get no break.
Right. So yeah, now rather than giving them $1, they're given a phone, and sometimes their credit card is hooked up to that phone. So when kids run out of money, they can go ahead and, you know, accidentally or not accidentally spend a little bit off their mom's credit card to keep going in their game. But the reason microtransactions have been brought into games in the more modern day era is money, of course. Developers need to make money. And at first, in the mobile space, I think it was like a lot of more like indie people, like solo developers of less than like 10 people, teams, all just trying to figure out like how to monetize their games. And at first this was like, just put ads everywhere. Like anytime you play a level, shoot a 30-second ad in there. Anytime you die, 30-second ad. And this was nauseating. And at some point, I think this kind of changed into like, let's do ads and add these like extra things where you could spend in $1 to like keep going, which they pulled from like 80s arcade design and stuff like that. But getting money helps to pay the developers, and also whatever CEOs and stuff get paid as well up at the top. Like the microtransactions are going into their pockets, and it's ideally all going into keeping the studio afloat and leading to more content. So like at the very least, if you're giving money to Rocket League, you're helping to keep Rocket League going. Disconnect that statement from the fact that they're owned by Epic now, and Epic just like prints money at this point. But before, when you had to pay for Rocket League and they were more like indie, you were paying for the microtransactions or whatever, thinking like, oh, okay, this is gonna like lead to more cosmetics being made. And whenever new game modes and stuff would come out, it felt great, because if you were a free player, you would think, oh shit, basketball mode just came in the Rocket League. I never thought they would work on that. That's neat. Let me check this out. And if you're someone who like paid into the ecosystem, you'd think, whoa, they made like basketball? That's cool. I'm so glad I like helped contribute to them being able to experiment. The opposite side of that coin could be, they put basketball in? Why the fuck do I want basketball in my soccer game? I can't believe I paid for this. Exactly. So long story short, that's why the video game industry has microtransactions now. It is them finding new ways to make money.
It reminds me of like if I'm going to compare it to like an animal, buying like a $60 or $70 video game is like getting chased by like a cheetah who will inevitably catch you. And like, you know, drink all your blood like a slushy. But like the microtransaction is like the small leech that is just like, taking its little leech teeth or whatever it has and like just
harmless at first, but then eventually you like uncover your leg and you see 70 fucking leeches there and you're like, oh, I'm gonna die in 40 seconds.
No, I was gonna say before we were talking about like with like battle passes, it seemed like we were talking about particularly how there's like a small but steady revenue stream that's diffused among like a ton of players.
Yeah.
Would you say that Candy Crush is dependent on the whales more so, and like what do you think the structure is for like receiving extra lives? Do you think that that's like I'm someone who has played those kinds of mobile games, and like Best Fiends is like a game that I've had on my phone, and I'm like on like the however many 100 levels that I've played over the last like 3 years. I barely ever play it, but like when I do, I'm like, I'm fiending,
Yeah.
But I've never purchased. That's one of those games like Candy Crush that has extra lives that you can purchase after you've lost all your lives. I am someone, I don't know what percentage of people would be like me, where they are like kind of like quite dedicated to this game, but are not going to put in any money. And then like we have a friend whose mom, I don't even know if you remember the story, if you know about it, but the mom spent thousands of dollars literally on Candy Crush. I mean, she was certainly a whale of a like, and she paid someone's salary like single-handedly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy that it was like, yep, that's someone's like paycheck.
Damn. I mean, in the mobile space, like, I think, they are hardcore, like, targeting. I don't know if I'll say dependent. I mean, probably to a fair extent, they are making a large portion of money off whales, and that's who they certainly want to get because, okay, this is going to sound very callous, so, like, bear with me, listener. The whales are out there. The whales are people. Whales are people who are susceptible, who have addictive tendencies, and are susceptible to dropping large amounts of money into a game. The term whale was coined by someone who gave some sort of business TED talk on these like microtransactions and stuff. But yeah, it's basically like once you hook a whale, you're going to get enough blubber from them that you'll be rich for a while. And from a business standpoint, you don't really care who these whales are. If it's like somebody's mom who just spent her entire salary over the course of a year on Candy Crush, or if it's a Jeff Bezos who's just dropping 2 minutes worth of his money's time on your game, like the mobile industry wants that money. Like they want that big money, or they want that like really constant trickle feed of money. Like a whale doesn't have to be someone who drops $1,000 in like one purchase. A whale is someone who drops $1,000 in a month and then does that every month for a year.
I also just want to say that I love the term whale for microtransaction users because whales like subsist on really, really small food like plankton. And that is like, that's harmonious, that, like that term. Okay.
Yeah, so microtransactions are successful when they are paired with a somewhat like manipulative design. Like microtransactions on their own are not successful, but when they are put into the moment of I only have 2 shots remaining, they're both red, and I need a yellow. I need to like spend $1 to get this power up to change the color of my bubble. That is the moment that makes the microtransactions successful. And the reason why they are successful is because the targets that they go after are the ones that are easy to manipulate and get to bankroll your studio to a degree. And this is primarily in the mobile space. And I will say in the AAA space, it really feels like more and more that publishers, I think more so, not necessarily the developers, that publishers more so are taking the mobile-minded design approach to microtransactions, especially like more recently. So, Ryan, you said you love the term whales, but do you have any thoughts on whales being people who are, let's say, susceptible to like addictive tendencies, or rather they have addictive tendencies and could be susceptible to those moments that I described?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Let's just step out of video games for a second and like talk about like drug addiction, right?
Yeah.
Being educated about something doesn't necessarily inoculate you from the susceptibility of that thing, right? So you can be an obesity researcher and still like be obese, you know, and perhaps you chose to study obesity because you have struggled with your weight or something like that, right? But I want to think that being educated about how these games are like manipulative, right? Like from like there, I mean, it comes from so many different angles. It's like the pop-ups, it's the like the reinforcement techniques that they use, you know, that where they're at irregular intervals. It's the colors, it's the sounds, you know, all of these things are harmonizing in such a way that it is really difficult for a person to override the inclination to make the micro purchase, right? And some people will be more susceptible than others. I want it to be the case that if people were informed, that itself would be a shield, you know, and I'm just not convinced that it is. I want to educate people. I want people to know about it, but I feel like we already know about things like, I think many people are aware that their like algorithms on Facebook, for example, are totally unique to them, and that the political information, like their political diet is catered to what they already believe, and that there's going to be confirmation bias that's curated for them in order to get them to feel more outraged and all of those kinds of things. But just because people know that doesn't mean that they're not going to continue to fall for it, because they still do believe what they see, and it's hard to override that. And you know, I think we see this on both sides of the political aisle. And so what I've tried to do, like politically, is really not even have opinions as strongly as I used to, but to just kind of observe the opinions that other people are having and trying to make sense of my own intuitions, you know, reflect my intuitions like onto other people, or you know, take other people's intuitions, and really more than their intuitions, it's what they take for granted, like what they assume to be true automatically. And then I like kind of use, you know, hold a mirror next to that, and I kind of juxtapose what my own intuitions are with what this person's assumptions are, or what something like that, right? And I'm hoping that kind of prevents me from becoming susceptible to the like political toxicity and stuff. I know that sounds really off topic, but I try to do something really similar for like battle passes and microtransactions, where like I have tried to understand like psychologically how these kinds of manipulation work, and knowing and like I don't know if that has helped me to resist it, like if there's like a certain kind of like self-awareness that can go into like fostering a defensive, you know, kind of like I'm just gonna go back in my shell, you know, I'm a turtle like in my shell right now, and you can throw whatever you want at me, but like I'm gonna be impervious because I've got this like hard shell of knowledge, you know. Or maybe it's just the case that I don't have that particular kind of addictive tendency, you know. It is certainly the case that I like have struggled with certain kinds of dependence, you know, and that I have like, you know, obsessive tendencies and those kinds of things, but perhaps it's like the microtransactions aren't hitting for me in the right place.
I think you brought up some good examples in what you said, and I too do a similar thing with the various microtransactions. Not so much like I know about them, and it's not so much like building up a wall of them, but more so like now I just am studying them in a dramatic sense. It's like know thy enemy. In a more, I don't know, video gamey sense, it's like being a Pokemon researcher. Almost, you know, it's like it's like all these things, they belong to the same animal kingdom, but let's see how they're slightly different. Like Rocket League's passes does this and has these types of challenges. Like the very small minutia differences that I like seeing are like Rocket League has challenges that require you to use the quick chat system, whereas like Fortnite doesn't have that. Exactly, right? Good game. Calculate. And like Fortnite will ape things from like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 in their challenges, where it's like collect the letters that spell Fortnite all across the map, and it's like, oh, let me kickflip across these as well. Those, like, I like studying that part of things, and a little bit of the psychological side I try to get into. I do have a friend who's kind of like that turtle you described, like I have a friend who works on a mobile game that does have microtransactions, and we share a friend who is a fan of I think she mostly plays mobile games, and it's mostly that type of game, and she specifically plays his game because we're friends and stuff. But when we talk to her about it, she explains that when she hits a point where it's like, oh, I'm out of lives, she just says, oh, I'm done for the day, or like she's done for however much time, but usually it's like for the day, and then she'll just play again tomorrow. And also that's like her turtle shell right there, but she also has this intuition, like she can tell when the game is kind of like not putting the odds in her favor, or rather the opposite, like the game is putting the odds against her in a way that it almost seems like it's trying to goat her into spending money.
It's rigged.
At times she gets the feeling like it is, and I have gotten that feeling across many mobile games. I think there are just times where the algorithm is saying fuck you.
So you're saying that it's like either unwinnable or essentially unwinnable, like nearly unwinnable?
There are times where puzzle games will feed you an algorithm that's unwinnable, yes. I don't think it's all the time. If it's all the time, then your algorithm's really messed up and you need to like fix your design. But there are points where you just hit a sequence of pieces where you're like, seriously? Like, come on. I swear I've had many a times where I'm playing Candy Crush and I'll wipe out an entire column or an entire row, and the whole new set of pieces that come in are just like all just shit pieces. And it's like, well, why'd you give me this knowing that this was going to make me lose?
I feel so betrayed by the idea that like a game could be rigged against me. Like, it should be neutral, you know? Like, clearly there have to be some kind of conditions that don't make it too easy, so, you know, like difficulty is necessary in games. Otherwise there would just be no point. It would not be fun. If it was just like, if everything was already like the same piece of candy and you just like swiped it, you know, and the entire board cleared, and then it was like populated by a full like board of new candies that were exactly the same, you know, I mean, that would just be like, why would you do that, you know? But the idea that it can be so difficult that it is actually impossible, just, it feels like so unethical. Like, I'm putting my time into this thing as a way to challenge myself and, you know, also, you know, spend time or waste time and, you know, stretch my like, you know, mental muscles. And, you know, I'm trying to, you know, like when I play Monster Train, like I feel like I am thinking very hard, you know, like I'm doing that because I want a certain kind of stimulation. And if I found out that Monster Train was not allowing me to win, like, I would be devastated. I would just stop playing it. It would be like, okay, like,
that's 100% why I stopped playing I don't flat out stop. I mean, it does hit a point where I do flat out stop playing the app, but absolutely what you described is exactly like what happens. And if you're a player that's not susceptible to just one more from a financial standpoint, then you will say, all right, well, screw this game. I'm going to like put it down and maybe come back later. But yeah, man, that happens. I can't say whether or not it's like intentional or what have you. I can say that from my own personal experience, just flat out shit just doesn't go your way in a puzzle level, and it leads to like bad, like crummy situations. So something that I don't know if I'm not sure we'll be able to actually cover it in this episode, but definitely falls under the realm of microtransactions. And I think we may want to talk about it maybe from a more financial / parasocial standpoint, but gacha games. Ryan, if you're unfamiliar with them.
I am unfamiliar.
Okay. So gacha games come from Japan to an extent. I think they mostly originate in Japan. They are games like Genshin Impact, where the primary, almost primary meta mechanic of the game is the gacha, the slot pull machine. Like a big handle, they call it like a gacha pull, is a big handle, you pull it and then it spins up and then it spits out an egg with like some sort of like toy in it, or lottery thingy.
So it's like a loot box, right?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
So this got gamified, and in Japan became a wrapper around many different game genres. So for example, Genshin Impact is the most recent popular waifu Breath of the Wild type game. So the gameplay is very much like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, but the gacha mechanic is that the characters you can play as are all different lottery pieces. Like, or rather, they're different lottery rewards. So you can get an in-game currency or spend real money to get an in-game currency that gives you more number of pulls to draw characters out of the slot machine, I guess, or the roulette wheel. And these characters will have different like rank levels. So you could get like let's say it was an Avengers game, so that I can just like name characters. So if it was a gacha Avengers game, you could spend 1 Marvel coin to pull, and you get like a B rank Iron Man, and you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. He's kind of strong. He has like B rank laser boost, and you can pull again using another Marvel coin, and the lottery machine now gives you an S rank, triple S rank actually, Iron Man. He has holographic background and all this different crazy shit. That's what a gacha game is. Like, and the money comes in through the pulls. It's like, hey, do you want to like pull just one character? Or do you want to pull 10 characters and we're guaranteed to give you one that's epic level? That's just like the primary practice in those types of games. But I wanted to cover that maybe in another episode and sort of relate it more so to the act of like pulling these characters, and then also the like connections that people make to the characters, because, you know, like I mentioned, the waifus like Breath of the Wild, like, and I guess husbandos, people connect to these characters a lot, and at times oftentimes they actually will play it. It's almost like more of a fashion game than like a stat game. There's 2 ways you can go about it, is like you're either spending more money to pull characters that have better stats, or you're spending money to get your favorite looking character, maybe with a particular costume or at a particular rank, because they're your favorite and you don't care if they're not the optimal one. But jumping out of that for a moment, Ryan, when did you start noticing microtransactions in, say, like bigger games? Or maybe when did you start noticing them in general? Because you did mention Candy Crush, and, you know, you were playing Farmville, and
Yeah, I was thinking of Farmville when you first asked this. I think that Farmville, God, what was that? It was like 2009. It was like
something like
Facebook
that.
2009. Yeah, something like that. I think that if I recall correctly, there were purchases that you could make in Farmville. So I would guess that that's when I saw it. And it kind of makes sense, because that was like a free-to-play game, and prior to that, I don't think I was really familiar with any free-to-play games, since it was just mostly like home console stuff. But I'm trying to think if there were like other internet games or something like that where there were microtransactions, but like all I can think of is like Flash games, and none of those had microtransactions from what I remember, like none of the ones that are coming to mind.
I think in that era of like Facebook gaming, I don't even know if MySpace had any gaming stuff, but I think with the Facebook gaming, it was definitely Farmville or like one other similar thing. It wasn't like Clash of Clans, but it was kind of like similar to that concept. Yeah, so we saw them definitely come up on the Facebook games. Like, I think you could spend a little money to sort of like speed up the harvesting of your crops or whatever. And that's another form of microtransaction we see, right? We've been talking a lot about the cosmetic microtransactions, but we never really touched on like the functional microtransactions, which they're, I guess, like in a business sense, or maybe the way business people want them to be known as, are time savers, because you're like spending money to either boost the speed at which you're gaining experience, or boosting time to get tasks done, like lowering time to get tasks done,
or like new maps or stuff like that, right? Like the DLC stuff that we were talking about at the top would fall into that category of like functional.
Well, the DLC, I mean, a skin could be DLC. Sorry, right?
Yeah, so I meant like the new levels, new maps, those kinds of things that are not purely like cosmetic.
Oh yeah.
Like I bought DLC for stacking, right? Like I got stacking with like the games with gold, and it was like, dope, this is free. Like Tim Schafer game, like let's see what's up. And it was like 3 levels, and it was like $5 for the DLC, and I was like 1.5 levels in, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go for it. And like, I know the approximate length of a level. I assume that the 4th level, the bonus level, is gonna be roughly the same length as the other levels. So I purchased it for $5, and I was like, wow, this game was free, but I spent money on the DLC, and it's like that money's going back to Microsoft because Double Fine owns Microsoft, and it's like that was probably a pretty good idea for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like that they, I wonder how many people purchased the DLC for that game after playing it, if they got it when they got it for free.
And that seems like much more of a value in that scenario, right? Like that's kind of a different lane. Okay, so you kind of like touched on 2 things. One, bigger games having like paid parts to it. In this case, well, because the game is an older game and kind of a smaller game, the DLC, the expansion for it is like on the cheaper side, whereas if you were playing World of Warcraft, like the expansion of it might cost like $30 to $60.
Earlier I was talking about how information can inoculate someone from, like whether or not that's possible. And nested within that conversation, I suppose, is the idea of like whether or not this is fair, and like there's a whole like free will determinism like side road that I think we're gonna try to like mostly avoid, even though we're gonna be orbiting it. But basically the idea is like how much control do we generally think that people have, right? This is like one of the perennial questions in psychology, right? Where it's like, do we assume that like people are like behavior machines where, given specific inputs, there will be specific outputs? Or do we think that they kind of are free agents, and that they are, like more of kind of a humanistic approach generally assumes that there's like a certain amount of like free will that people have, that they're able to act like what would be called an internal locus of control. They believe that they are in control of their own lives, and that's how they find fulfillment and those kinds of things, right? So if we think of things in a more behaviorist perspective, then we would say that the certain stimuli that people are receiving are going to cause them to make these micro purchases, and they really are not in control. And that kind of has more of a paternalistic approach to it, right? We would be like thinking that we know what's best for people. That might lead us to want to regulate the way that microtransactions are. The way that businesses are trying to extract microtransactions from people's wallets. The other side of that, right, would be like, no, people have the right to enter into this kind of like, agreement. They have their checkbooks, and if this is how they want to charge their credit card, they're allowed to do that, and there's a contractual relationship. They are hitting okay. They are hitting I accept the terms and conditions. Blah, 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 blah. I'm curious where you fall on that. Is the business side of things, how responsible is the individual? Is there something, in the middle where they're both kind of responsible? What are your thoughts?
I kind of fall in the middle, honestly. Like, I think microtransactions can be something that live harmoniously within games. Most monetizations, I feel, can live harmoniously in games, but oftentimes I think the business side of things, since they're the primary money holders, like the developers are the more like technician and artistry side of things. So figuring out like, how do we get someone to spend like $2 million after our game is made isn't exactly like the primary driving thought to the people putting the game together. Anyway, getting back to my main answer, yes, it's in the middle. The user, the player, has to take responsibility for their own actions if they do not have the self-control to like stop themselves from spending an absorbent amount in a little amount of time on a game. That is on them to a degree. Like, even if they have addictive tendencies and stuff like that, the onus is still to some extent on them. Where that extent ends, I'm not sure, so that's why I'm going to talk about the other half of the coin now, the business side. I think it's on the business/developer end to not create these very predatory hooks in your game. And by predatory hooks, I mean like intentionally pitting the odds against you, maybe having like invisible odds, like with the gacha games, the waifu like pull games for new characters. It was for a long while you never even knew the odds of like the characters you were trying to pull. And I think just recently, and likely due to legislation that happened somewhere in the EU between 2K and the EU, they started giving out these statistics. So it's like, hey, this loot box has a X% chance of giving you this waifu or something like that. So you knew, okay, well, if I'm going to spend 10 of my Marvel coins to get Triple S Iron Man, I have a 10% shot. Sure, I'll spend 10 coins to make it a bunch of 10% shots or something like that.
So you're saying more transparency from the companies and would be at least
more transparency and mindful design.
Okay, so there would be more. You're trying to promote integrity in the from the corporate lens rather than just trying. Yeah, that makes sense. I really like them giving you the percentage so that you can have more. They're encouraging you to be aware about what you're doing. And I mean, imagine if slot machines had like, oh yeah, you'll win this 2% of the time. Like, I wondered if we would see fewer people at slot machines, or if the people would be like, 2%, I only have to do it 50 times to be likely to, like.
Funny enough, on the podcast, Trash Taste podcast, it's an anime-focused podcast, recently they were talking about gacha games and specifically brought this up, the statistics being shown, and the fact that, like, nothing really changed when before statistics were shown and after statistics were shown. Like, people just want the waifus, they jokingly say. Like, people just want to see their bae and they're just going to roll for their bae. Now they see the percentage chance, and most of those same people are like, hey, I'm just going to roll anyway. Yes, I do advocate for the transparency, but it's really more so like the mindful design of things. Like, I dislike predatory, mentally manipulative, like, design hooks a lot. It's, even though this character is like basically a hypocrite within the show, Stan Marsh, current season of like South Park, I feel like that image of a farmer. Like, when it comes to the game development industry, I have the mindset of the Tegrity farmer who just has like a piece of like wheat in his mouth and it's just like, yep, I make wholesale games that are farm raised, cage free, burr burr burr. Like, game devs should be able to roam the pastures and everything should be good and have integrity. And like, that's what I want. Like, just this perfect world. But to put my ideas into more tangible examples, something with more integrity than like, oh, this thing fed me like bad bubbles all the way through, like, let me spend money to like do this, would be maybe something more akin to like, oh, the algorithm is like, I can see that I actually have the color I need, like, in the chamber. The algorithm is not fucking me over, and making explicitly clear, like, hey, let's put in hooks that say if you're like almost there to like solving something, lean the odds in their favor or something like that. Like, obviously you don't need to always guarantee victory. That makes an easy game, but right now it feels like the scales are always tilted in the other way. And I think that is more predatory than, kind. So just going about it that way and really thinking, and this is, I guess, where the business side of things have a hard time, or maybe they don't because they take the stance of like, well, the customer is responsible for themselves. But like, putting yourself in the shoes of somebody who could go through that pain, I feel like is, something good to have. Like, imagine yourself as like, a mom who like goes broke for a month because she spent too much money on a game or something like that. Like, imagine yourself in those shoes and be like, well, do I really want to set up that situation?
In general, I'm pretty like hard determinist So
what does that mean?
Hard determinism is the like belief that okay, I will say what my belief is specifically. I don't believe that like mental properties have causal power. So essentially, like, we are physical machines that have, there's an epiphenomenon of thought and experience that we have, but that's almost like a byproduct of like, the neurons being stimulated, which is, we could reduce to atoms. And, so I have quite a physicalist approach to how the mind works. It's essentially a sophisticated computer, and with that comes the idea that people are, again, like, just machine-like, like so the people who are most susceptible and have the specific set of environmental predispositions and the genetic precursors, those people are going to be most susceptible. Like, that being said, I don't really feel like anyone can really live their life that way, and I don't feel personally resigned to the microtransaction, and I try to resist it, but the capabilities that I have to resist it are, it's almost I feel like I did not choose to have a kind of brain that would allow me to resist it, right? I think I'm beholden to the limitations of my own making, I don't mean that in a theological sense, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of there's a cognitive dissonance that I really wrestle with in my own approach to existentialism, where it's I really don't think that things could be other than they are, because I think that it's kind of just the dominoes are falling from the Big Bang, and there's only one pathway for things to be. At the same time, I find meaning in my own life, and it almost feels like that meaning is arbitrary because of the fact that it is necessarily going to be this way. And with that belief, I guess it's hard to understand for me how... I think the corporations are very liable and responsible, but I also don't know what kind of world I want to live in. I don't know what the right amount of corporate regulation is. There are too many political and economic consequences, so I don't really have a strong intuition about that. And I generally want people to be able to be free to make decisions that I would think are poor, and they may think that they're good decisions. My heart has been changed on something.
Yes.
Earlier in the episode, you talked about how you purchased the Fortnite Battle Pass, I think it was, because you wanted to not just experience the cosmetic gimmicks that they provide, but also because you wanted to support the developers. There may have been a different game that you were talking about where you were talking about wanting to support the developers specifically. But anyway, I think that is a very intentional reason. I think that most people just want what's in it for them, and that's the reason that they purchase it. And so my main association with people who have battle passes is again transactional. It's purely an egocentric motivation where it's well, I want to be cool, so I want this blue man in Fortnite, so I'm going to pay for this, and you're, it's I don't go get a haircut because I want to pay my barber money because I think he's a good guy, but the fact that you're willing to purchase, obviously because you're a developer, I think that you have an insider view that a lot of people don't have. But it's similar to I purchased Control even though it was on Game Pass because I was this game is too good for me to not support these developers, and I absolutely am grateful to them, and I want to show them that kind of gratitude in a monetary way. But I've never considered that kind of thing with battle passes, and I really like that that intentional way of it's almost like donating. It's you donate $15 and you also get this stuff back. So that was really cool for me. But what about you?
I like your change of heart, by the way. I'm glad our talk got you thinking about battle passes in a new light. I think for me, I've put a bit more thought into the recent question of who has, more onus in the scenario. And I feel while in a perfect world, I kind of want to have it be fully in the middle. I think more realistically or in a more idealistic perfect world, it would slightly lean towards okay, no, it's definitely different ways of thinking. This is tough, Ryan, because again, there's different philosophies and definitely political backings to it, but
right, my belief about the metaphysics of it does not correspond neatly to the political ramifications that I would want to enact. So
yeah,
I have a really hard time with it where I'm well, clear, based on my understanding of cause and effect, then, it should be X, but what do I do about X? It's now I have to take X and then plug it in to an equation that it's not going to fit neatly. It's an irrational number in this other equation. So what's your real change of heart then, since you just change back to the original position in the middle of the change of heart?
So my change of heart is like, take the needle less away in terms of like who should have more responsibility, like the business slash publisher for the microtransactions or the consumer, rather than having the needle be perfectly like in the middle. I think I'm actually like gonna lean it like 10 to 20% more towards the consumer, in that you need to at first like educate yourself, and then also like build in that level of discipline that stops you from the initial branch of like, I died, like let me spend money now. That's something that can and should be easily avoided by the person playing the game.
So impulse control. You're saying like people should train themselves and become resilient to those kinds of traps.
Thank you. Those were the words that eluded me. Impulse control is absolutely it. Consumers need impulse control, or they are responsible for their own impulse control. That being said, a developer that tilting that needle towards the consumer side now gives the developer slash publisher room to put in a little bit of those hooks. Like if they wanted to, they could say, hey, 1 in every 10 runs, like, you know, fuck them over with the last like 10 bubbles. And I can understand, you know, if for the games that are, we're talking specifically for like those free to play match 3 games, the ones that are more reliant on the advertising money and the people spending, like that to me makes more sense if you put in like very mild hooks. Like where it is right now, like the needle is too far over on the consumer side. But I think the more perfect picture is like, let the people trying to make money like do a small like trick or two to like to help survive, as opposed to like slap them fully on the wrist like, no, be fully wholesome and you know, consumer friendly. Like being consumer friendly is good, and it can coincide with having friction in your game, like putting in that code or that algorithm to say every now and then, being pretty infrequently, like the game will somewhat screw you over, as opposed to like your own shot screwing you over. I could see that being like okay, again, in a very infrequent sense. So yeah, that's where I stand with my change of heart.
Cool.
And with that, we are going to bring today's episode to a close. We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and as with every episode, we hope it sparks some new thoughts in your minds. And if you have any feelings on microtransactions, thoughts, maybe good studies and articles that we could reference in future episodes about microtransactions, it would be great to hear from y'all. Just go ahead, jump on over to the Deep in the D-Pad Reddit, subreddit.
Give us some love.
Give us all that love, listener. Again, thank you so much. We hope you have a great day. We're going to get to gaming.
Peace. Thank you for listening to Deep in the D-Pad. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share us with your friends.
For updates and discussion, follow us on Reddit at r/DeepInTheDPad, Facebook at DeepDPad, and subscribe to Deep in the D-Pad on YouTube. Don't forget to hit the bell.
And if you want to ask us questions or get a chance to share your own D-Pad delight on the show, email us at askdeepinthedpad@gmail.com. Be sure to put question or delight in the subject line.
Big thanks to 8-Bit Jazz and Kevin MacLeod for supplying the music for the show.